Hey everyone, welcome back to the Knitting Expat Podcast channel. My name's Mina and I'll be your host today. I'm coming to you from where I'm living right now in London with my family, and yeah, today is Friday the 6th of July. This is episode, I think it's 124. Yep, 124, and yeah, so welcome. I don't usually record on Fridays because Fridays is actually a nursery day for my daughter and it's technically a work day for me, but this week has been extremely busy, so this has been the first chance I've had to record a podcast, so I'm taking it. We are also going away this week, well, from tomorrow for about a week, and so yes, I knew I wasn't going to have another opportunity if I didn't take it now. Anyway, so places you can find me online: you can find me as Mina Phillip on Ravelry, you can find the podcast group on Ravelry as Knitting Expat Podcast on the groups tab, you can find me on Instagram as Knitting Expat, and that's probably where you'll find me most active, and yeah, there's links to everywhere you can find me below this video on YouTube. You can find me you can find show notes for this and all previous episodes at knittingexpat.wordpress.com. And yeah, it's been a while since I've recorded. Unfortunately, life has just been incredibly hectic and busy this last month. I had a trip over to New York, and then I was really ill for a while after I got back, and then last weekend our boys, our two cats, they came to London and I had to go pick them up. So there have been a couple of vlogs in the last few weeks, but I just have not had the time or the brain space to sit down and do a proper podcast for you guys. So the knits have stacked up. They have really stacked up. I have 6 pairs of socks and 2 jumpers to show you guys today. So yeah, quite a few things have come off the needles, and I only have one current active work in progress. So I am definitely, if you haven't been watching for a while, and you may not know, when I started knitting I was very much a monogamous knitter. It was like one thing at a time and that was all I would do. And then I sort of gradually progressed and started having more than one project on the needles, and I'd have 3 was my sort of happy place in terms of the number of projects I had going. And then since having had Layla, my daughter, I seem to have regressed back to my one at a time ways. I typically have one pair of socks on the needles, typically vanilla, and then something else, be it another pair of pattern socks or a design, because I'm pretty much always working on a design project. I also design knitting patterns, if I hadn't said, as I design as Knitting Expat Designs on Ravelry as well. And yeah, so I pretty much always have a design project on the needles, which means my non-design knitting is typically just vanilla socks. So there's always a pair of vanilla socks on the go, and then whatever else it is that I'm working on. So right now I don't actually have any vanilla socks on the needles at the moment, but I will be casting some on soon. And yeah, anyway, let's get started. I have quite a lot of things to talk to you guys about today. First of all, I wanted to quickly say I did just publish a new pattern this morning. That's the Garden Gnome hoodie for children, and I've actually packed the sample away because I wasn't planning on publishing it today, and I forgot to grab it before I started recording. Anyway, I will try and remember to pop up a photo somewhere around here for you guys to see it. So yes, that's the latest pattern available for purchase, and you can use the coupon code GARDEN, just all lowercase, just the word GARDEN, and that will give you 20% off until the end of the day on Monday, which would be the 8th. So no, sorry, 9th. End of the day on the 9th UK time, like midnight on UK time. So other than that, I wanted to go over the first 7 months of the New York the Wanderlust and the Cozy sock clubs that I've been hosting, and yeah, it's been so much fun, and I can't believe we're in month 7 already. But I realised that because of the way my schedule has been completely all over the place this year, I've not really had a chance to show you all the designs necessarily on the podcast, so I wanted to go through and do a bit of a recap and show you all of them so far. So first up in January we had the Restverber socks. This was part of the Wanderlust sock club. And for this I used I Am Fully Spun yarn. Then in February we had the first pattern from the Cozy Sock Club, and these were the Warm and Snug socks, which I used Cozy Knitter yarn for. So it's beautiful sort of like really squishy welts in the striping, which works really it's really fun to work with the self-striping yarn, I feel. And then in March we had the next pattern in the Wanderlust Sock Club, and that was the Derivé socks. And for this I used Yoshi and Lucy knits, and this is actually the chocolate cake colourway. I remember the colourway for this one. There we go, it's just really fun, very simple sort of eyelet and texture pattern. And then in April, so that was March, then in April we had the next pattern in the Cozy Sock Club, and that was the Nestled socks. Sorry. And for this I used Maker's Haven yarn in the Midnight Talks colourway. I don't believe that Amber is really dyeing yarn anymore, but which is a shame, but yeah, it is beautiful. And this was a very fun sort of ribbed pattern with some simple cables. And then so that was April. So then for May was the next pattern in the Wanderlust Sock Club, and we had the Vagary socks. And the yarn for this one was from Teeny Button Studios, and I believe this one was in the Sally's Pralines colourway. It's really fun, natural with speckles, and again the pattern on this one was just a really fun texture. This actually was something a little bit different as well. I thought it was a good one for the beginner sock club in terms of expanding skills and trying something a bit different. And then in June we had the next pattern in the Cozy Sock Club, and that was the Huggle socks. And this is using Nora George yarns, and this colourway was called Phillip Town, which I think might have been a custom colour that she did for me, considering she spelt Philip the way that I spell my surname. And it's just a very fun sort of panel of a cabled it's a cabled panel, but the cable's made up of twisted stitches, so it's just a really fun twist on a what is otherwise quite a simple sock, and gives it enough interest for it to be interesting without it being like overly complicated. And you know, I like pattern socks, as you can tell, but I also like my socks to be portable and easy to work on the go, so that you don't necessarily have to be glued to a pattern the whole time, or that the pattern is such that it's very easy to reference and you don't have to, like, you know, pay a whole ton of deep attention to it all the time. So that was kind of my philosophy behind designing these socks. And then we come to July's pair of socks. So the current month's release was again from the Wanderlust Sock Club, so I'm alternating months if you hadn't figured that out. And this was the Coddywomple socks. And Coddywomple comes from Old English slang meaning to travel purposefully towards an unknown destination, which kind of feels like what our lives are like right now. Things are a little bit up in the air, things are a little bit uncertain. They're getting more and more certain every day, thankfully. Things are starting to fall into place, but it's still a long ways to go. And honestly, I've just become so accustomed to living with this level of uncertainty in our lives that it's actually a little bit unnerving how unfazed I am by it all now. It's not that it doesn't bother me, it's not that it doesn't stress me out, honestly it really does. And it amuses me to no end that people think that I'm handling this so gracefully, because that's like, I tell Perry that and he laughs because it's just not the case. But you know, what you see online isn't necessarily the 100% truth. Not that I lie, it's just I don't necessarily share absolutely every little detail. But anyway, went off on a tangent there. The yarn I use for these socks, if it will focus, is by Once Upon a Corgi, and this is in her Narnia colourway, and I absolutely love this colourway. It is basically my favourite shade of green. This is just perfect, and I love it. It's actually the base of this design is just a knit pearl texture, nothing more complicated than knits and pearls, but there's some added slip stitches in there which just gives it some added dimension and a bit more interest, both in the knitting and when you're looking at the pattern overall. And yeah, so that's that. So that is the stack of 7 pairs of socks so far for this year. There are another 5 pairs to come. So yeah, I still can't believe we're over halfway through the year. It's a bit mind-boggling. And yeah, so that's where we're at. And I thought this would be a good time to have a bit of a recap. Alright, so with that, we will move on to finished objects. And like I said before, we do have a lot of finished objects. I have 6 pairs of socks and 2 sweaters to show you. So let's start with the socks, because that will be the quickest to go through. A couple of these are designs, so I can't, for the sock collabs, so I can't necessarily show them to you like in a lot of detail. So first up, the vanilla socks. I knit a pair of gradient vanilla socks out of some hand spun that my friend Sarah spun for me. And so I started these cuff down, and I started with more stitches than I usually cast on because I knew these were going to be longer, because I wanted to use up as much of the yarn as possible. So I started with, I think it was 72 stitches, and then I slowly over the first few inches decreased down to 64, which is my usual stitch count. And all my socks are knit on 2.25mm needles, either high sharps or chagus, unless I say anything different. That is what I do. And my heel of choice for all my socks is a German short row heel, and I'll typically do that in garter stitch. Sometimes I do it in stockinette stitch, and I also use the modified heel flap adjustment or mini heel flap adjustment, which was something else that I've written up and included in most of my sock patterns as well as like a little extra. So that's what I do. The mini heel flap or modified heel flap adjustment just gives you a little bit of extra space in that instep area, so it just adds like a little mini gusset to that, so it just adds a bit more depth to the heel. Yeah, it's a bit hard to see on a sock. It's easier to see it on socks when you've got a contrasting heel, so I'll show you that later. And the fibre for this, I believe, was from a Moon Rover fibre club from a couple of years ago. That was a gift. And yeah, so that's how these have turned out. They're beautiful. I love them, and I can't wait for the weather to cool down a bit so I can start wearing them. That, and also so it's not so hot all the time. Then next up we have, oh sorry, in the fibre blend, I believe this one was a BFL nylon blend. Then next up I have a pair of vanilla socks using some King Cole yarn, and so this is just a standard 75-25 superwash wool nylon blend. And again, I don't know the colourway number or name, but it's just sort of like fun rainbowy stripes. And this will go into the gift pile for Christmas time. And then we have this lovely pair of socks, which was, the yarn was a gift from the lovely Amelia or Emily, I can't remember how she pronounced her name, but she's from Norway. She has the Arctic Knitting Podcast, and we did a swap way back when, years ago, and she sent me this beautiful skein of and I'm just going to completely butcher the name of this, Maskapiken yarns. It's a Norwegian indie dyer. Actually, Amelia now actually dyes yarn as well as Arctic Knitting online as well. She's since started dyeing yarn. But I knit up another pair of vanilla socks. I intend to keep these for myself, but we shall see. They might go into the gift pile. It just depends on where I'm at by Christmas time, if I need an extra gift or not. But I do really want to keep this for myself. It is an 80-20, oh sorry no, it's 75-25 superwash merino nylon as well. And the colourway is Goldfisk Ibollen. I don't know what that translates to, but it's beautiful, blues and oranges. I really like sort of blues and yellow / oranges as a sort of colour combination. Alright, so next up we have one of the sock designs, and this was using Sweet Sparrow yarns in the Clara colourway, which I believe is a Nutcracker reference. and I'm going to try and show this to you without showing any of the design. There you go, so that gives you an idea of what the colourway looks like. There we go. Get that to focus on the yarn and not my face. Anyway, you get the idea. It's a lovely sort of lilac-y purple with speckles. And that's knit up really nicely. And that's actually going to be the November Wanderlust. It's going to be the last pattern in the Wanderlust collection. And the next one I have to share, which I can't really share much of at all, because the design is so all over it, is the December Sock Club pattern for the Cozy Sock Club. So you can see it a little bit there. I did show this on my New York vlog when I finished knitting these. This is a sock using mini skeins, sock knit using mini skeins, so it kind of gives that scrappy feel. You can obviously use scraps and leftovers or mini skeins if you'd like, and yeah, it's supposed to just be something a little bit fun, a bit textured to do with your scrappy socks if that's what you want to do. And considering Christmas is around the time when everyone gets those advent mini skein, well, those mini skein advent calendars, I thought it would be a really fun thing if you wanted to knit up a pair of socks like that for Christmas and use your mini skeins from your advent calendars. So that was kind of my thinking behind that one. So that's 5 pairs of socks, and the last pair of socks I have to show you is another design. But this isn't part of the sock club, so I'm happy to share it with you guys. The only reason I'm not showing the sock club ones is because they're supposed to be a surprise each month, and I don't want to ruin that surprise for anybody. So yeah, so this is the last pair of socks I have to show you. These are on blockers still. But yeah, so this was knit using, the yarn was by Goosey Fibres. Just double checking my notes. Yeah, Goosey Fibres on her 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon base. The main yarn, sort of the variegated colourway, is called A Wrinkle in Time, and the neon almost fluorescent green is called Horcrux, which is a Harry Potter reference. And here you can see in the heel how that sort of modified heel flap adjustment just adds that little bit of extra depth to the shorter heel. And yeah, so if you couldn't tell, there's a little bit of colour work in the top section here. I was asking on Instagram for ideas for naming it. You can probably see it a bit better on this one. And someone suggested Hugs and Kisses because it looks like X's and O's, which I thought was really cute, and I think that's probably what I'm going to call it. So you start out with some twisted ribbing, which isn't in a standard sort of ribbing pattern, and then it goes down into this colourwork section, which actually I did go up a needle size for the colourwork. I went up to a 2.5, US 2.5, sorry, a 2.5 millimeter, which is a US 1.5, and so I did the colourwork in that. Oh, and I also did increase in stitch count as well, just to allow for the lack of elasticity in that part of the sock. Then I switched back to my regular needles and I decreased back down to my regular stitch count, which is 64, and incorporated some more twisted ribbing in the rest of the leg and the foot. And this twisted ribbing follows down from the twisted ribbing in the cuff into the rest of the sock, so it kind of all flows together. And there's another little touch of colour work at the end before you start the toes. And so yeah, so these were really fun, and I actually found with the colour work that it was a bit easier to maintain an even tension, specifically in this top cuff section, by turning the sock inside out and knitting it inside out, which seems a bit weird at first when you first start to do it, but actually it wasn't that difficult to knit that way. And because it's only for, like, you know, what, 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches at most, it's not actually that bad. And yeah, so that's these socks. I still have to write up the pattern. I still have to figure out how to like adjust it for different sizes, because it does involve like a few different things that I have to think about in terms of like getting the chart to work for different sizes as well. There's some adjustments I'd have to make there, which, not impossible obviously, it's just going to take me some time to figure that out. So hopefully these will be out hopefully sometime towards maybe the end of next month, because these ones I will get test knit. Usually I don't get my sock patterns test knit, just tech edited, because I'm pretty confident in my sock formula and my designs in that regard. But this is my first time designing colourwork socks, and I feel like I really want to get these tested to make sure that they work in the different sizes before I publish them. So you can stay tuned for these soon. And yes, that's it for socks. That's it for all the socks. All the sock talk is done for this episode, and now we will move on to garments, because that's basically all the rest of my knitting that I have to talk about are garments. So first up, the one you've seen before, pretty much finished. I think this was even off the needles last time I showed it to you, but it hadn't been blocked. It's my triple Dutch cardigan, which is the adult version of the double Dutch cardigan, which I published a couple months ago. It's a bit hard to show on camera, and I'm not putting it on right now because it is so hot today. But you can see one cable running down the side of the front, and then one cable running down the other front, and then there's a double cable running down the back. So in the double Dutch cardigan for children, there's only one cable down the back, and the triple Dutch cardigan has two cables down the back. So it's kind of just to differentiate it a little bit from the kids version. And it's got the same shawl collar. And the thing is, I still need to get buttons for this cardigan. I still need buttons, but I'm sure I will get those eventually. I'll try and put this on. It is really hot today, but I will try and put it on just quickly so you can see how this sits. I kind of need to reblock the collar a little bit because I didn't block it properly, but yeah, you can see how it is. It's really nice, it's squishy, and it's still open without being too open. It's not as open as the mix and match cardigan. The collar on that one was a little bit more open than this one is, but not by much. Like, it's still pretty open. I kind of like my jumpers and pullovers and stuff to, cardigans and pullovers, to have like an open neck, because I find with me anyway that I've always struggled with sort of maintaining body temperature and like managing my body temperature, especially in the winter. I get cold a lot, so I like being able to layer stuff up. So this is why I don't wear turtlenecks, because then I overheat, and then you can't remove the neck of a turtleneck. That's where it is. That's why you'll never see me wearing a jumper or a pullover with a cowl neck or a turtleneck. It's just too much fabric up here that I can't do anything about. So I like having this open collar, because then if I am cold, I can put a shawl or a cowl or something else to cover that area separately, and then still having the option to take it off without the rest of me getting cold if I start overheating. So it lets me to better manage my body temperature, essentially, which is why I like this sort of shape in a neck on cardigans, like the sort of V-neck openness. I don't know if you guys needed to know that, but apparently I felt like you did. So that's that, and this was knit using Lolo Did It yarn on her Whole Lotta DK base, which is a 250 gram skein of sorry if I shut the camera there for a second, and let me just double check. Yes, so it's 85% non-superwash Polworth and 15% silk. It is really lovely. It's got that slightly more rustic feel to it without being rough or scratchy at all. Perfectly next to skin soft. It is great. And yeah, and I'm really looking forward to just getting some buttons on this finally, and being able to wear it when it gets cold again. But I do need to take pattern photos for this, and it is currently being test knit, so that's exciting. And that was knit using sorry, I'm just trying to find my notes on it, 4mm needles and 3.5mm needles, so that's a US 6 and a US 4. And yeah, I really enjoyed that one. I did actually share the design process of this on Instagram, so if you're interested, you can go to my profile page and follow the story of that on there. I used the hashtag I think it's "this is my design process," as like whenever I share posts talking about my design process, essentially I use that hashtag on it, so you can follow that hashtag if you want to see more posts about that. I actually timed how long that cardigan took me to knit, and it was really interesting and eye-opening for me as well to see how much work and how much time goes into a garment design like that, because I'd never timed it before. And so yes, it was interesting. So yeah, there again, if you're interested, you can go check that out. And my latest my latest finished object, this was literally cast off yesterday, is what I'm currently calling my Waffle Pullover, because I haven't thought of a better name for it, but I hopefully will come up with a better idea. And if anyone else has a suggestion, by all means let me know. And that is this one, and I think the last time I showed it to you I was just around like this part here, and now it's finished. Actually, last time I showed it to you was on the vlog that I did last weekend, and I was just finishing up the second sleeve, and I was maybe 3 stripes into the body. So I finished the body now, and as you can see, the front looks like it's higher than the back, or like it's shorter than the back. That is not actually going to be the case once it's blocked, and part of the reason why I haven't blocked it yet, only because I finished it last night and it would have been wet and I would have been able to show it to you, but also because I wanted to show you this. The design of this pullover is knit top down, and it's designed so that the front and back are fully like identical. The neckline is the same on the front and back, and the idea is that it's reversible so that you can wear it with the texture facing forward, or you can wear it with the stockinette side facing forward and the texture on the back. So you kind of get 2 sweaters in one, because you can wear it whichever way around you'd like. But as you can see, the waffle side, the texture side, has a higher hemline at the moment. That's because the nature of this texture is to sort of like pull up the fabric just the way, you know, it pulls it in. So it does, before it's been blocked, it does look like that. But with blocking, if my maths is correct, and fingers crossed it is, otherwise I'm gonna have to rethink this design a little bit, this should block out so that the hems are even on the front and the back. So I wanted to show that to you, because when eventually this pattern gets released, and I don't want people to be freaking out about why the hem is looking like this, or why when they're knitting it the front looks so much shorter than the back. I have put notes in the pattern that is normal, that's fine, and that is, you know, that it will block out. But I thought I would talk about that. The last time I had this on the podcast, I had picked up for the sleeve in this last colour, and I wasn't sure if I was completely happy with it. A couple of people had come back and told me that I should have initially done the pickup stitches with the same colours here, and then started knitting from the next round in the dark colour to avoid getting those little blips that I'd been getting. But even with that aside, it just felt like such a stark jump, more so than I realised in my head, to go straight from this colour to this colour, when the rest of the body was going to be, you know, colour blocked like that. And it just felt like a really sudden change. And I wasn't sure if I was going to necessarily like the whole sleeve being in one colour. So I decided to mimic the colour blocking in the body and just do the same in the sleeves as well. And I'm really happy with that result. I really like how that has turned out. And yeah, so I'll go through the colours with you. So the yarn I used was all by Primrose Yarn Company in her Margot base, which is an MCN, and it comes in 150 gram put-ups. So really, really decent size skeins. You get 595 yards per 150 grams, which I believe works out to be about 545 meters per 150 grams, which is slightly less than you get in a typical 100 gram skein of fingering weight yarn. Typically you get around 400 meters, which is around like 420, 430 yards ish per 100 grams. So in that regards, it's a slightly plumper fingering weight, but obviously you can use any regular fingering weight yarn, would work perfectly fine as well. So I'll just go through and show you the leftover balls, because there is a very decent amount of yarn left over. So this is what I have left over, plus I have a whole extra skein of this darker colour, which I'll explain why I have extra of that. Sorry, I just dropped one of the balls. Okay. Sorry, the breeze just blew my door open. Okay, so the first colour I used was this one, which is When Legos Attack. And actually ended up using the most of this colourway. Then we had the next colourway, which was From London with Love. Sorry, no, Crime of Passion. This one's Crime of Passion. Then we had the Picket Line or the Parade. Get that There we go, that's better. And then we had From London with Love, which is this more purpley based skein. And then we ended with Morticia. And the reason I had 2 skeins of this originally was because I planned to do the sleeves all solid in this colour, and so I would have needed an extra skein. But I decided not to do that in the end, and just stuck with, let me see if I can show this to you. There we go. So I kind of have a very neutral gradient. I almost said nutrient. Neutral gradient going on. And I didn't do any sort of like fading techniques or anything. I just went with a simple colour block type system, which I really like how that's turned out. It's nice, it's simple, you know, it speaks for itself. It's not trying to be anything it's not. And yeah, I really liked it. And so now I'm hoping before we go away this weekend, I'll have time to block this. I'm probably going to put it on to soak after I finish recording. And yeah, I have some ideas of what I might do with all the leftover bits, because I have decent amounts of yardage left over, because they were 150 gram skeins. I mean, I have 50 grams of this, which is the least I have left over, and everything else I have at least, I have around 75 grams left over of each one, plus a whole 150 grams extra skein of that Morticia colorway. So I think, you know, I could definitely make something for Layla out of all that. So I might think about doing another design using the leftovers for something for Layla, so we will see. And that design has actually been drafted. I'm waiting on finishing blocking the cardigan, blocking the pullover before taking final gauge measurements and doing any final adjustments to the numbers and calculations in the pattern before sending it off to be tech edited, and then it'll have to be test knit and stuff. This pattern actually, because it's a collaboration and it's for a very specific thing, is not going to be coming out for a while. So yeah, I will let you guys know when it does come out, when it will be released. But I'm working, it's a collaboration with Kelsey from Primrose Yarn Company, and so it was for a very specific thing that we're doing together, and so it's not going to be happening for a while. So let's move on to works in progress. And like I said before, I literally only have one thing going right now. I did bring my granny stripe blanket back with me from New York, but I have not touched it. I'm considering taking it away when we go away this weekend, this week, because I feel like that might be a good thing to have when we're sitting around with family and just chatting and stuff. But we'll see. I might take it, I might not. Just depends on how things go when we pack. But the one thing I do have on the needles, and that will be coming with me, is this little thing, this little project that I'm working on. And the reason why it's not in a project bag is because I've been working on it this morning. And this, if you watched my weekend vlog, you'll know what this is. But this is a new design that I'm working on in collaboration with Cindy of the Mon Cheap Shop. And so she sent me the lovely yarn, and the red is called Little Red Hood, and the grey is actually a grey speckled, I mean subtly speckled. And the grey is called Big Bad Wolf. So it's Little Red Hood and Big Bad Wolf. And Little Red Hood, the colourway name, is what's inspiring the name of this design, which I'm deciding to call Little Red. I think that's quite cute. I try with my children's garments, specifically when they're unisex in design, I try not to give them a very gendered name. So like, you know, I don't want to call this Little Red Riding Hood because that sounds very girly, and I don't want to put people off knitting it for a boy because of the way the name sounds. So I thought Little Red was really nice and cute and sort of to the point as well. And yeah, so this is where we're at. And there again, if you watch the vlog, you'll know that originally I was doing this as 2-row stripes alternating throughout. I wasn't 100% convinced about it, and also the cables in the raglan, which is what that is there, along the raglan increases, were starting to really bunch and pull on the stitches and on the work. It wasn't looking quite right. And even with when I switched it up, and again I spoke about this on the vlog as well, to having the red being a 4-row stripe followed by a 2-row stripe of the grey, I thought that change in stripe width would add some visual interest, which it does. And the red is looking a lot brighter on camera than it is in real life. It's not quite that like fluorescent almost. It looks a bit more orange on screen at the moment. But the cables were still pulling a little bit in these beginning bits. I mean, I'm sure that will block out, but I didn't want that throughout the whole garment. So I actually changed the way I did my increases. I hadn't thought about that initially, but then once I switched things up and I was just working along, I realized the way I was doing my increases, which was just a make one increase, it was just causing a lot of pulling on the fabric. So I switched it up and I did something different. And actually it works a lot better. It's a lot more, the tension's a lot more evened out. It doesn't pull as much and it's looking a lot nicer. And what you may not be able to tell, but the cabling continues down the sides of the garment. And the cable's going to do something different as well. It's not just going to stay down the sides. It's going to do something else as well, which I've just started doing, but you can't really tell yet. And I'm going to keep that as a bit of a surprise. I've thrown in some short row shaping at the back of the neck, like, and over the shoulders a bit to raise the back of the jumper a little bit. I'm not entirely sure how I like that, to be honest. I'm going to wait until it is I think it's fine, and I think it will be fine in the finished object, but I'm going to wait until I've finished and blocked it to decide whether or not that part of it is going to make it into the pattern or not. Haven't completely decided on that right now, but yeah, so I'm knitting what will be the 2 to 4 year size. It's pretty much the size I knit for my daughter right now, because she's not really going to be wearing knitwear until, well, towards the end of this year, at least not for a couple more months. And she's already starting to fit into a lot of 2 year size clothing. So I'm just sizing up for her now, 2 to 4 years. This will be a good size. It will have a good amount of room for her to grow and it not to be too tight on her initially. And yeah, so I'm going to make it a little bit longer than I'm actually writing the pattern for, mainly because she is quite tall for her age and I want this to last her a long time. So yeah, I'm really happy with how this is working up. I should have this finished in not too long, to be honest. It won't take me long to finish this off. I'm already like halfway through the body, so not more, or more than even by now. So not really got a lot left on that one. And like I said, I will have a pair of vanilla socks on the go soon. Sorry, needles for that, 3.75 US 5s for that. And for the neckband I used US 3s, so 3.25mm. So my upcoming vanilla socks, I have this lovely yarn to cast on. And you may or may not recognise this colourway. This is Nomadic Yarns in her Rhinebeck Sweater Weather colourway. And this is on, I believe it's her Brit sock? Yeah, it's her Brit sock base, which is an 80% superwash BFL, 20% nylon. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting this cast on. I am planning on going to Rhinebeck this year. I don't know if I've ever actually spoken about that on the podcast. My intention is to go to Rhinebeck this year, whether or not we're living in the US at the time. It is unlikely that Layla and Perry will come with me this time. They came last year, but this time I think it's going to be a solo trip. I haven't figured out the details. I just pretty much know that I'm going. Again, October is going to be quite a busy month for us. The weekend before Rhinebeck, Perry has a potential work trip that he's going to be going on. So we're still trying to figure out exactly when I can go to sort of overlap with when he's here to look after Layla. So we're still ironing out those details, but just wanted to let you guys know the plan is for me to come to Rhinebeck this year, so I'm really excited about that as well. So I wanted to get my socks going. So that's basically what I'm working on right now and what I will be working on next. I'm trying to decide, I'm thinking of taking at least, I'll probably take yarn for one more pair of socks with me just in case, but also maybe for one more project as well, and I haven't quite decided what it is I'm going to be taking. I have yarn set aside and a couple of the skeins already wound up to knit myself a Rhapsody in Cables pullover, which is a design by Hohi Locatelli. And I actually bought the yarn last year at Rhinebeck specifically for this pullover. But the thing is, this year I've been so busy working on my own designs and patterns and stuff, which I'm incredibly grateful for, that I've been able to keep that up. But at the same time, I feel like I want to work on something that's not a design that I've, you know, something that doesn't require me to like work out the maths or anything, something where I can just follow the instructions and go ahead with it. And I think maybe this week is a good week for that, because we are going away, and you know, even though I will be taking some work with me, I'm not going to have a whole lot of time to do much work. And since I don't have a lot of design projects on the needles right now, like I don't have any other than the child's pullover that I'm working on right now, the cabled pullover. So I feel like now's probably a good time to take something like that with me to start on and to work on. I might not get it finished this year for Rhinebeck. It might be one of those things that I rarely ever do this, like put stuff into hibernation, but it might be something that I just pick up every now and again and work on here and there around other commitments. But we will see. I'm not 100% sure yet, but because there again it's an all over cabled patterned garment, I don't know if it's something that I can just work on during a family holiday where I'm not going to necessarily be able to pay 100% attention to it all the time. I think I need to sit down and look at the pattern one more time before deciding whether that's going to be something that comes with us on this trip or not. Anyway, I would love to take it, is what I'm getting at, essentially. And yeah, that's basically it for works in progress, stuff like that. I do have some stash acquisitions to talk to you guys about. There are a couple of things that I have to share with you. First of all, I met up with Kelly, who is one half of the Must Love Yarn podcast, and she and Angela have the Must Love Yarn shop in Vermont. And yeah, so she was in London like in early June with her husband for a trip, and I met up with them one day with Layla in London, and we went for a little walk around, and she brought me some goodies from the US with her. One of them is this adorable little project bag slash tote bag. How cute is this? The little sheep. And then it's got all these different sort of yarny knitty related words on the back, and a really fun sheep lining. I believe this tote bag was for they do Seasons of Vermont sort of like boxes or subscription boxes each month, and so this was part of the July month one. So hopefully I haven't spoiled it for anyone. I know that they show previews of what's in their boxes on the podcast as well, and I'm pretty sure they would have shown the July one by now. I'm quite far behind on podcasts, so apologies. And the yarn that they've included in this one, she also brought a skein of the yarn for me as a gift, was from Fibre Stash Dye Works, who is a local Vermont-based dyer. And yeah, so this is a special skein that she's dyed for Must Love Yarn, their Seasons of Vermont. This is the Getting Outside colourway, I believe. It's a superwash merino in silk sock. It's 50-50 merino silk, and it's 150 grams, 600 yards in this skein. So it's a nice big hefty yarn baby right there. A decent sized skein. This would be great for like a single skein shawl, something like a hitchhiker maybe. So yeah, and it's really soft. When with that silk content, it will have great drape in a shawl. So I'm not entirely sure what this will be. Maybe something for Layla, because she got really attached to this skein when I first pulled it out. She didn't want to let go. But yeah, we'll see. This will have to like sit and marinate for a little bit and decide what it wants to become. But thank you so much to Kelly and Angela for that. And Kelly also brought a little something for Layla, which I still haven't given to her because it's been sat in this bag since it arrived. But it's this book. It's called The Sheepover, Sweet Pea and Friends, which actually, funnily enough, I bought Layla the same book at Rhinebeck last year, but I got her the smaller, it's like the hard book, like the board book version of this story, which is a shorter version of the story as well. So this is a more detailed, this story's definitely got more words in it than the other one that I got for Layla. So this will be great for when she's a little bit older, I think. At the moment, like, she loves books and she loves flicking through the pages, but she can be a bit violent with her books, and she has a tendency to try and tear the pages out at the moment. So I'm probably gonna put this one aside for when she's in less of a rippy stage, as it were. But yeah, so that was really sweet, and I liked having a different version of the same story. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there were some other thingies. Oh, okay, so I think this is the card for the person who makes these tote bags, and it's by someone called Cat's Paws. So it's handmade in Vermont, sewn and quilted gifts. So that's the card, cat's paws, and the details on the back. See all that? And there was something else in here, if I can dig it out. Ah, that was it. Kelly also included a couple of Must Love Yarn pins, enamel pins. So I've got a couple of these set aside for giveaways, and I've pinned one already to my yellow canvas bag. Whilst I was in New York, where is it? I'm missing one. Okay, anyway, doesn't matter. Because I knew I was going to New York a couple of weeks ago, I went online and I ordered a few pairs of Cardigan needles. I do have 2 sets of high interchangeables, but sometimes I have more than the needles that I need. The tips that I need aren't necessarily available because they're on other projects or something. So there are a few needle sizes that I tend to use a lot in my work, so sometimes it's handy to have extras of those. So I picked up some Chuggies in extra sizes. I think I got 4.5, 4mm, 3.75 and 3.5mm, so US 4, 5, 6 and 7. I just got in, I believe I got the 80cm or 32-inch length. It doesn't actually say on the, yeah, 32-inch, it says on that one. Yeah, 32-inch length for all of them, just because it's a good size that I use for most garments. Oh, there it is. That's the 4th one. I use it for most garments. 80cm is usually the right size to get all around without having like the stitches too pulled apart or too bunched up. And then also whilst I was in New York, I met up with some friends, and the lovely Kristen, who's the dyer behind Bull and Vine Yarns, she was looking to destash some yarns, and I very gladly decided to give this skein of her yarn a home. So this is her harpsichord colourway on her Blitz base. So it's a 75% superwash merino, 20% nylon and 5% gold stellina, 438 yards or 400 meters and 100 grams, and it's this beautiful sort of golden yellow colour, which is one of my favourite colourways. Absolutely love this colourway. So even though I got rid of a whole bunch of yarn whilst I was in New York, I couldn't resist taking this one home with me. And yeah, so that's basically it for acquisitions. And yeah, sorry I felt like that section was a little bit scattered, just because I was also trying to think of other things I was trying to say. Anyway, moving on to knit along and giveaway news. I just posted a podcast prize winners announcement video last night, so on Thursday, and so that's up now. I've announced prize winners for both the May prize drawing for the Cozy Sock Club and the June prize drawing for the Wanderlust Sock Club, and also a sort of mid-cal prize drawing for the Changes Shawl Knit Along, because the Changes Shawl Knit Along was originally supposed to end on the 20th of June, but I decided to extend the deadline to like the early September. But because some people had really made an effort to finish by that deadline, I decided to do like a mid-cal prize drawing for those who were able to meet the original deadline, because I felt like that was fair, because it's quite a sizable shawl. Anyway, so those prizes have now been announced, so you can go check out that video. It should be the video before this one on my channel. And moving on to Q&A, there is one question in the questions and answers thread in the group, and that is from Yarn Addict 98, and she says, hi Mina, Perry and Layla, apologies if you've already answered this question, but I was just wondering how you store your finished knitted objects, and if you store them with something like cedar blocks or wash them with natural bug repelling wool washes. Thank you for your podcast and your lovely patterns. I hope one day to have knit them all. Thank you so much. In terms of how I store my finished knitted objects, I probably don't store them the best way that I should, to be quite honest. At the moment, now some of them are in storage, which I've folded and put away neatly, and like stuffed a whole bunch of lavender sachets in there with them. But the knits that I have with me are usually just in a drawer. There's nothing special about it. With shawls, I try to roll them up rather than fold them to avoid creases. and everything else just gets chucked into a drawer pretty much, and I have a few lavender sachets in there, and that's pretty much the extent of it. We did have an incident a couple of weeks ago when my brother was wearing one of his store-bought wool jumpers, like merino wool jumpers, and he was getting ready to leave the house, and I sort of said to him, I was like, do you realise there's a pretty sizable hole in your jumper in like 2 or 3 places? And he flipped out. He was like, the damn moths, like there are moths in my room, there must be, like this. I've been going on about it. He's been suspecting that there's like moths somewhere in his room, and I'm still a bit dubious because I've not actually seen any around, and I'm not entirely sure if there were, but he went on like a full-on rampage and just basically took everything out of his room. And one day when there was no one home, he like smoke bombed his room, like, to get rid of them. Like, I told him like there were other ways to go about it. I even asked for help on Instagram about it, and thank you everyone for your suggestions. I passed them all along to him, and I think he ended up going with like 3 or 4 different methods. And he's like, I've never bought so much moth repellent stuff online, from like lavender to cedar to like the chemical stuff, all sorts. Anyway, I've checked all of my yarn and stuff, everything's fine. There's no issues in our room. It seems to have just been where he is, and his stuff is all upstairs in the attic anyway, so it's kind of separated. And my stuff is all in like separate bags and sealed and stuff away, so I'm not too concerned. But yeah, so we had a bit of a moment with that a couple of weeks ago, and someone asked me to talk about how to repair like moth-eaten knitwear, and to be honest, I don't really know a solution for that, to be quite honest, because especially because the jumper of my brother's that was damaged was store-bought, and it was a much finer gauge that you would get with hand knitting. So I have no idea how you'd go about fixing it, and it was quite a sizable hole for how small the gauge is, so I really don't even know if that's possible to fix without it being very obvious. So yeah, so that was that. And there was something else I was going to talk about on that topic. Can't remember. Anyway, so moving on to weeks in review. Like I said, I've had a couple of vlogs recently, so I'm not going to cover the same sort of topics as I have done in those. So we had the trip to New York, which I vlogged that trip, and then I was really ill for a couple of weeks afterwards. When I got back from New York, I wasn't feeling well for the rest of that week, and I did not feel quite right at all. Then I went on my friend's hen party, which was based in London, so I was home in the evenings afterwards. But then on the Sunday we went for brunch, and then by the time I got home I was feeling horrendous, like so bad, and I was really ill that afternoon, and I was pretty much ill for the rest of that week. Perry was heading back to New York on the Tuesday to get the boys ready to fly back, so it was pretty tough. It was a tough week with Layla being ill, and yeah, thankfully by Friday I was feeling much better. And then over the weekend, I spent the weekend with the boys. I went and picked them up from the airport, took them down to Perry's parents, and my mum and dad watched Layla for the weekend. And then I got back Sunday afternoon. One of my cousins is over in the UK at the moment, visiting from Seattle with her kids and her husband, and they're staying with my aunt, my cousin's mum, I guess. Yeah. So they're staying there. So they came round for dinner that night on the Sunday. That was last weekend. And yes, it was just really nice weekend. Again, I vlogged that weekend, so I'm not going to go into too much more detail of that. And then just spent the week at home. We had a busy day on Wednesday. We had a few errands to run and stuff, so we were out and about. Layla's super chatty, it's so adorable. I'm still trying to figure out what she says half the time. But she's definitely, her comprehension is definitely getting there. Like, I ask her to bring something to me, and usually she will, or you know, she'll at least understand what I'm telling her. It's amazing to see how much she's changing every day still. Yesterday was one hell of a day. She basically, there was nothing I could do right. Nothing I did was right. We had one good hour yesterday when I took her to the park, and she was happy for that the whole time that we were out. And then it just all went downhill after that, to be quite honest. Basically every time I tried to hold her or touch her, even at some points, like, she would just start screaming. She'd slap me, she'd scream, she'd shout. She's teething. She's going through a bit of a rough time with teething at the moment. and it was just basically she's taking it all out on me. And I appreciate that it's not personal, and I know that most kids go through this, but it's quite hard. It's quite hard when like, you approach a toddler and the moment you touch them that they just start screaming at you, but anyone else they're fine with, and it's just quite hard. It's hard to deal with that. Like yesterday she woke up from her nap and I went to pick her up and she wouldn't let me pick her up. Like I was trying to unzip her sleeping bag and she was just screaming and slapping my hands away. I was trying to, like, you know, get her out of bed and she just wasn't having it. And then as it happened, Perry got home just at that moment and he came upstairs and like she was all smiles, all happy to see him, was like happy for him to pick her up, but literally wanted nothing to do with me. Even at dinner time, I had to sit across the room. I couldn't sit at the table with her. I had to sit at the other side of the room because otherwise she just threw her food at me. And then in the evening, my mum had to do her whole bedtime routine with her because every time I picked her up, she just screamed and slapped at me in the face. So that's going on right now. So that's fun and enjoyable. And I've been warning Perry, I'm like, I'm afraid you're probably going to end up having to do most of the things for Layla for the next couple of days just because she doesn't want me to do it or won't let me do it. So we'll see. Hopefully she gets past it sooner rather than later, and yeah, things can go back to being a bit more normal. Yeah, I really don't like the fact that she doesn't want me right now, but yeah, like I said, I know it's not personal. She's just a baby, she's going through a phase and she'll get past it and it'll be fine. But yeah, it doesn't stop it being a little bit painful at the time. Anyway, I'm trying to think what else was there. Yeah, so we're off on a family holiday. We're going away with Perry's family for the next week, I guess. We get back later next week, and then off next Friday, Perry and I are off to a wedding. One of my best friends is getting married, and then I think we're catching up with some friends over the weekend. And then it's also the World Cup at the moment. I haven't really spoken about this. I'm not huge into watching sports, but I do kind of get into like more national sports where it's like the World Cup or the Olympics. I kind of really get into those. The World Cup slightly less, but this year I've kind of gotten into it a little bit more. And so we were watching the England game the other night and it was getting pretty tense towards the end there, but it was a really good turnout and it was really good. I enjoyed watching that game. There aren't very many football games that I enjoy watching, and that was actually quite good. So tomorrow actually is England's quarterfinal match, for anyone who's interested. But because we're heading up to where we're going on holiday, we're actually stopping to see Perry's uncle on the way up because it's kind of on the way. And so we're stopping there for lunch and we'll probably watch the game there, and then we'll carry on afterwards. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that, and then yeah, just spending some time with Perry's family, and his sister and her family are coming as well. So it's gonna be a nice sort of like family get together slash going away. And the boys are going to be looked after by a pet sitter. Perry's parents have someone who used to pet sit for them before their cat passed away. So she's actually been round to meet the boys and the boys loved her. Perry's mum sent me some photos and Hugo's all belly up and is just like, stroke my belly. And even Derek was being all snuggly with her, which is unheard of for Derek to be that snuggly with someone who's essentially a stranger. So I'm sure they're going to be well taken care of. I think that pretty much covers it, to be honest. I don't think there's anything else I needed to tell you guys about. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'm planning on vlogging this trip that we're going away for. But it's probably going to be more of how I was doing my vlogs before, where it's just mostly music and background, and less of me talking to the camera, and probably more just like clips from our time away rather than the way I vlogged when I went to New York or last weekend. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Hopefully sometime next weekend I will have that up, and I hope you guys had a lovely week and have a lovely weekend coming up. The weather in the UK has been super lovely and hot and summery, but I will admit I am missing air conditioning right now, and I kind of wish we had our AC back, but yeah, it's been great so far. I'm enjoying the nice weather. It means we can get out of the house more, which is also great for Layla, and yeah, so I will catch up with you guys again soon. Take care. I hope you have a lovely couple of weeks before I get to chat to you guys again, and I will see you soon. Bye.